There's button 25 here.
And he's just
So we're watching
announced
Pléiades
that we
Neo 4,
are
Let's Out
1
Red
minute
Cube,
to launch.
Sunstorm and
We're
Pro 4.
delivering Pléiades Neo for Airbus Defence and Space, along with Bro 4 for Unseen Labs, Sunstorm, LEDSAT and RadCube for the European Space Agency. I'm going to turn my
Vega
mic
launcher.
off now and give our very best wishes to all the teams. Let's watch.
T-minus 30. Also, when this thing goes, it goes quickly. You'll see what I mean. T-minus 15.
À tous de DDO, attention pour les décomptes finales.
10,
10,
9,
9,
8,
8,
7,
7,
6,
6,
5,
5,
4,
4,
3,
3,
2,
2,
1,
unité,
0.
top.
Ignition and liftoff of the Vega.
Allumage P80 et décollage UV19.
Look at it go.
La propulsion est nominale.
Look at it go.
Et sur plantation de Saint-Jean.
So of course the Vega has,
What
I
a
believe,
sight.
3 solid
They
stages
are
and
off.
one liquid.
Vega streaking across the night sky, lighting up the skies over the spaceport, over the Amazon rainforest. Our passengers have
Also, I
started
believe
their
those
journey.
fluctuations in brightness are just the
Pléiades
clouds
Neo,
between the
Bro
camera
4,
and the launcher.
Sunstorm, LEDSAT and RadCube are on their way. It's a huge moment for everybody who's involved. It must be quite something watching your babies lift off from the pad. Getting a great view here. We can still see the launcher 1 minute and 25 seconds after liftoff. We're looking here at the...
Trajectoire est nominale.
He's telling us that everything's going according to plan. We were looking back there at the main stage, or the first stage, the P80, the engine of the P80 it's known as, burning. We tucked in behind the clouds for a bit, but we came out again, so we got a great view. This is what it looks like up there in space, with our CGI images giving us a great view. We
Okay, that would be your first stage separation.
have confirmation there of separation of the P80,
Allumage du Z23.
and the Z23 has switched its engine on. We are
Z, I
hurtling
believe,
through
stands
space. Look on
for
the right-hand side
Zephyr.
of your screen. At the bottom, vitesse is speed. We're travelling at the moment at 2.35,
I'll stick around for this whole
7,
launch. I've
8
got nothing to
kilometres,
do
and we're getting
tomorrow.
faster and faster. We've began the dogleg manoeuvre. We were rising up into space, and then we turned towards the north, heading towards what we call a sun.
Trajectoire est nominale.
He said the trajectory is nominal or normal. Heading towards a sun-synchronous orbit, which means we're virtually going north to south.
The way those
Good view
orbits
there
work
of
is
our
there's
launcher on the right-hand side, and on the bottom left you can see that's our trajectory, we call it. It's the planned trajectory, and the white cross is the actual position of the launch vehicle. Take a look at what we call the fairing, the front of the vehicle. You can just about see on the bottom of it a line. That's because the fairing is made of 2 halves, and it's going to open like a petal when it separates. Now, leaving Earth behind us.
Trajectoire est nominale.
Trajectory is nominal. We're climbing.
So
Look at the
separation's at
altitude, bottom
23.
right of your screen, 127 kilometers, and climbing.
Séparation
there
Z23.
it goes.
And we have separation there of the Z23 and beginning of the roll motion.
And there's ignition.
Allumage du Z9.
switched the engine on of the
There goes the
Préparation de la coiffe.
the Z9 engine, and we have separated the fairing. Did you see how it came away? All perfectly planned. We don't need the fairing anymore because we're out of the friction of the atmosphere, so we're effectively in space. We are 149 kilometers high. That means we crossed the threshold into space about 50 kilometers ago. And look at that, you can see our satellite.
Et nominal.
For the first time, the gold structure on the right-hand side, that is Pléiades, all folded up right now, all nice and neatly packed together, but later, after it's released, it'll unfold its wings, just like a butterfly coming out of its chrysalis. And then, to the left of it is the conical structure. That was the payload adapter. Look, you can see where we lifted off. We came from the launch pad at the CSG, the Guiana Space Center in French Guiana, on the northeastern coast of South America. The tracking station there is Galileo, and we're heading towards the next tracking station in Bermuda in the Caribbean. And there you get a better view there of the conical payload adapter. And then to the left of that is the big tank burning its fuel. So we're heading towards a sun-synchronous orbit. That means that our satellite will always be in the same fixed position relative to the sun. So that's very useful for Earth observation. Oh wow, look at that. It's really, really interesting watching how these maneuvers happen in space. And these images are the CGI images which have been very carefully planned.
Well, then again, there's a schedule,
all
not
the
telemetry,
information
so
has been put into the computer and we produce these really sensational graphics. So the sun-synchronous orbit is very useful for satellites which are Earth observation satellites because it allows them to monitor the same place at the same time every day. So, for example, our satellite might fly over Paris every day at noon. The launch is operating remotely. And there we go, separation of the final stage there, which means we're now really entering the next phase of our flight.
Which is the
Z9, the third stage, has been jettisoned.
I believe at this point,
and this means
Vega
that the propulsion phase of the launch is now over. We've got ourselves away from Earth and we're on orbit, and we're getting a great view of the Avon upper stage. So this here, I'll describe that to you in a second when we come back to it, but right now we're looking again, we're heading... Right, we picked up the signal at the Bermuda tracking station. Now, look at this. These boxes, which are attached to the payload adapter, are called deployers, and inside those are our CubeSats. Our CubeSats are made of 10-centimeter cubes, so they fit very, very neatly inside there. It's really quite beautifully planned. And so later, once they get released, they're going to pop out of those boxes, just like Jack-in-the-Boxes. And they'll shoot out into space.
So you can either fit
So we're looking at the Avum or the Avum upper stage. The white disc is where we have the vehicle equipment bay with the avionics, the onboard computer, that sort of thing, and obviously the propulsion. Everything's going well. And the upper stage has switched on its engine, that's confirmed. So this is really the next stage of the flight now, because the Avum upper stage is going to transport our satellites to their destinations in space. And that is a very, very important job, because each satellite has to be positioned in a very precise orientation and in a very precise location. He's telling us that the trajectory is nominal. And the Avum upper stage, it actually stands for Attitude Vernier Upper Module. I call it avum because I'm a Brit, but it is often known as well as avum.
Pilotage est calme.
He says the pilotage, the piloting, is calm. And it's a very useful piece of kit because it gives us huge flexibility and allows us to perform all kinds of very complex missions. It means that Vega can launch all kinds of different satellites, and it's particularly suited to these kinds of Earth observation missions for governments, space agencies, and of course today, private companies. Bit of technical information. The avum is 1.5 meters wide. It weighs approximately 1.3 tons. It's made of aluminium
La propulsion est nominale.
with titanium tanks, and it burns liquid propellant. Like many upper stages, it can switch its engine on and off. And it's the smart stage. It's the one with the brain. It's the clever bit. It's housing the computer, as I mentioned, the avionics and that sort of thing. And then attached to it is the conical structure, the payload adapter, which then allows us to attach our upper passenger, the Pléiades Neo main passenger.
Yeah, I think I'm out there trying to just get up to full orbital speed.
And
Let's raise the
avum, or
Apollo.
avum, has now
Gee.
started what we call orbit-optimized guidance attitude. That means that once it switches its engine on, it can continually recalculate its position to make sure that it's exactly on the right course. And if it does deviate, it can correct itself and come back to the correct trajectory. So it's pretty clever stuff.
Acquisition de la télémesure pour la station de Saint-Hubert.
And we've picked up the signal now at the next tracking station. It's in Saint-Hubert, or St. Hubert, and that
It's
is
in Quebec.
in Quebec in Canada, just outside Montreal. The aerospace industry is very important over there. The Canadian Space Agency has its head office in the borough.
Oh, the more you
And
know.
Europe's blessed with a family of launch vehicles which can take pretty well any kind of satellite to any kind of orbit. And that's important because these days space really is the gateway to a very exciting future, I'd say. Miniaturization is the order of the day, and the market for small satellites is quite literally booming. And these changes are driven by, well, a number of things, but of course the climate crisis is one of those things. As you well know from the newspapers and the reports recently, July was the hottest month ever. And we're seeing floods, we're seeing heat waves, we're seeing fires, people are dying. Our planet's climate is changing faster than we'd thought. Airbus are doing their part. Their growing fleet of Earth observation satellites can really help to provide very irrefutable data for understanding what's happening to our planet. But it can also help us to plan for disaster management. Satellites and satellite images are all about
Propulsion est nominale.
knowing what's on the ground. So if you know what's there, you know how to adapt, and the more detail you have, of course, the more efficient you can be. So, for example, it might help in planning how to evacuate a hospital or an old people's home, for example, in the case of a flood, if you've got very, very accurate imagery. So this is important stuff. What we're doing today is very, very important. Well, the other thing, of course, that's transforming our lives is our hunger for the internet. We might be living increasingly online these days, you know, but the truth is we're really still at the beginning of this digital revolution. And in the next few years, if you were on an alien spaceship traveling towards Earth, you'd see thousands and thousands and thousands of little tiny satellites orbiting our planet and delivering high-speed broadband, keeping us all connected everywhere on Earth. It doesn't matter where you will be connected, and not just you, but your stuff as well, your things. All of these small satellites need to be launched into space, and that's where Arianespace comes in, because they have a lot of choice for different types of satellites, and they've deployed rideshare and piggyback options too, like today. Today we're on a piggyback configuration,
Propulsion est nominale.
all going well. And it just shows how Arianespace can adapt and offer their customers the very best solutions for their launch, because of course each launch is different. Vega and Vega C are particularly well suited to these kinds of missions, as I mentioned earlier, and that's primarily because Vega is very versatile and light, and she's small and she's flexible, and despite her diminutive size, she can carry lots of satellites at once. It's a fact. Good things come in small packages. Vega can offer various configurations for carrying its passengers, and we've got a number of different dispensers. One of those is called the Small Spacecraft Mission Service. It can carry multiple satellites at once, and it would sit, for example, between what we're looking at. We've got the satellite at the front and we've got the payload adapter. Imagine it in between those two things on the image on the right side of your screen. And it first lifted off actually in 2020, and it carried 53 passengers. It's pretty impressive, isn't it? The new Ariane 6 rocket is going to have the multiple launch service. We're not using a dispenser today. Our innovative engineers have attached the CubeSats directly onto the payload adapter. So we're traveling light today, and that's actually quite beneficial because it's allowed us to move our flight path 15 degrees to the right, 15 degrees east, rather, to the right. Just shows. And that's actually good because it's been able to improve our chances of launching on time. And the reason that works is because sometimes high altitude winds can delay a launch, but by moving our trajectory 15 degrees to the east, we've been able to take advantage of those winds. So yeah, it's all very clever stuff. He's telling us that the propulsion's nominal, and that's good to hear. Right now, the AVUM upper stage. And he's confirmed the upper stage has actually switched its engine off. That's what it looks like up there. Right, so we are now beginning the orientation phase. AVUM is putting itself into the separation orientation, I believe, getting itself into the correct position so that it can separate the satellite later. Here we go. It's moving around into position.
I think it would be more for thermal reasons at this point. The infamous barbecue.
We've travelled just under 6,000 kilometres. If you were to draw a line along the Earth from the launch pad. And we're now starting, well, we've started the ballistic phase, the first ballistic phase.
Which just means
means that we're travelling without the engine, we're coasting without the engine. And we're also, if you take a look at the passenger, you can see we are twisting. We're actually, well, we're in the barbecue phase now. The barbecue manoeuvre is the technical term, believe it or not, yes?
Yeah, they're
I love
not
how
joking.
they call it that. Lots of other very technical terms, but the barbecue is definitely my favourite.
Well, my personal favourite is the troop snoot.
As if on a spit. We're doing that to keep the temperatures homogeneous and even, because of course when you're facing the sun it's very hot, and when you're facing space it's very cold. And if you're interested, we're twisting at a roll rate of 2 degrees per second. And the trajectory is nominal. Shortly we're going to be going out of the range of the tracking stations. That's perfectly normal and it's all part of the plan. I'll let you know when the range operations manager announces that. But we'll be out of touch with the launcher for just over half an hour. We won't be getting any telemetry data from the launcher during that time. And then when we get back into range, the launcher's going to store, AVUM will store up all the information accumulated during that half an hour or so. And then when we get back into the range of the next tracking station, that's New Norcia down south in Australia, then there'll be a big download of information to that tracking station so that the teams here at the Guiana Space Centre can then find out what's happening to the launcher in real time and also analyse the information afterwards for future launches. So let's have a little chat now about our main satellite, Pléiades.
I'm actually going to pause the video here.
This is a very, very special satellite which Airbus minutes and 23 seconds ago, we lifted off from the pad at the
Vega's
Guiana
back.
Space Center. 10:47 at night, local time in Kourou. That was 1:47 universal time. And we went hurtling into the night sky on board a Vega rocket, lighting up the skies over the spaceport, which is right on the coast. So we're heading out over the sea here. We've got a great view of the launch, and now this is what it looks like up there in space. We have our Pléiades Neo satellite attached and our other 4 auxiliary passengers attached to the upper stage. It's called the Avum or Avum upper stage. Our auxiliary passengers are in those little boxes that you can see attached to the adapter. They're the deployers. They'll come out of those. But first of all, before that can happen, the Pléiades Neo satellite needs to be released onto its orbit. We've been traveling outside the range of the tracking stations, and soon we're expecting to come into the range of the new Norcia station. There's our flight path. We've been traveling north to south. We lifted off from and we've got confirmation there that we've picked up the signal in the new Norcia tracking station. And you can see our telemetry details have come back on the bottom of the screen. And we're traveling there at a speed, vitesse of 7.55 kilometers. We're at an altitude now of 619 kilometers, and that's where we need to be to release our first satellite. We've crossed the planet. We've done nearly, I think it says 18, nearly just over 18,000 kilometers. If we were to draw a straight line along the Earth, we've traveled that distance, so it's pretty impressive. Flying now over, or heading out towards the south, the west of Australia. And he's telling us that everything's normal. So we will have downloaded a lot of information from the Avum upper stage to the tracking station in New Norcia. That information helping the teams at the Guiana Space Center, the telemetry teams, or the CVI as it's known there, to give us this telemetry in real time and let us know how things are going in real time. They then pass the information on to the range operations manager, who calls it out. Next phase will be the switching on of the upper stage. It's getting ready to switch its engines on now, back in the pre-burn phase that we saw before. There we have confirmation there that the upper stage Avum has switched its engine on, and it's now going through an orientation maneuver, as you can see there. It's quite impressive watching it. Quite impressive watching it all. It all looks like everything's happening in slow motion, but the truth is we're hurtling along at just under 8 kilometers, 7.5 kilometers per second. Let me just drive that home for anyone who's never seen a launch before. Not per hour.
Okay, I don't know if this is meant to be accelerating, because if so, it's doing it very
we've
slowly.
climbed now to 623 kilometers altitude. Look at the line of our atmosphere, the blue line of our atmosphere on the edge of the planet. That's what's protecting us and keeping us safe, and we need to keep it safe. Upper stage,
cut off,
performing orientation maneuvers. We have to position the satellite incredibly precisely into space. It needs to be orientated to a very specific set of procedures. All this has been incredibly carefully planned. It's quite beautiful to watch. You can see why some people like to call this the space ballet. That's what it looks like up there, with Avum moving the satellite into position so that we can then get ready to separate the Pléiades Neo satellite.
There we go, separation.
And we have confirmation. The Pléiades Neo satellite has been separated.
There's going to be another run too. Variant.
Very happy faces in the Mission Control Center. People have worked for many years for this. It's a big moment. A wonderful moment. And of course it's the end of the job for some and the beginning for others, because we have the teams on the ground who are taking charge of their new baby. And they need to be concentrating very hard right now because they are operating their satellite. And of course they'll be waiting for Neo to call home. The team there and the flight directorate all looking very happy. JPE, I wonder what that means. So we saw Pléiades Neo there moving away gracefully from the mothership. A set of springs moving it away. And we still have 4 satellites attached, of course. Passengers, they're going to be released in about 50 minutes from now. Their separation will start at 1 hour and 44 minutes after the launch. I think it might be nice to have a look at some replays here. This is what it all looked like right at the beginning, 56 minutes ago, lifting off from the pad. So our 4 satellites, just a reminder, they are LEDSat and Sunstorm. They're going to be released first. Then Bro 4 will be released. Bro 4 has its own deployer. And then they're followed by Radcube, which will be released after the others. And you can watch all that because we're going to leave our live stream up for you. We're going to leave our CGI images, and we'll also leave the range operations manager. You'll be able to tune in, listen to him. And we're going to leave all the telemetry information for you on the screen so you can follow the launch on the screen. Or you can also keep track of our social media websites, and we'll keep you posted on our Twitter account. You can get all the confirmations of the separations and all the information. So, good luck to everybody for the release of your satellites, and congratulations to Airbus Defence and Space. I hope everybody feels proud of themselves. It's a job well done. Very best wishes to all the teams involved in today's mission. I'm going to cut my mic off now and say goodbye. So from me, Katie Haswell, and our interpreters, and from everybody who's bringing you this live webcast, until next time, goodbye.
I'll stick around for the CubeSat deployments. Well, we're almost at the next burn of the Avum, so I'll keep the video going until then. So it looks like I think the Avum just oriented itself for the burn. Okay. So I think this is just going to be a quick burn, just to change the orbit enough to, well, get into the orbit that it's meant to be in. Also, I just do probably a terrible job of. I'll try that sentence again. I'll do probably a terrible job of explaining how Sun's synchronous orbit works. So the Earth isn't, fully a sphere. It's a plate sphere, meaning it has a larger diameter at the equator than from pole to pole, which means there's more gravity there. And that, kind of as things orbit, it will pull the orbital plane of the satellite, causing a thing called orbital precession, which will ensure that the satellite stays always, well, sun-synchronous usually just means in this situations that, well, actually in most cases it would mean that you would set it up so you always have sun. In this case, however, I'm not so sure because it was pretty late. Though with the dog leg, I don't know. I think here it's meant to be half orbited, daylight half orbited. At night, I don't know. But yeah, maybe the burn already up. We just missed it because of everything else. Or not, I don't know. I'll wait for a little bit more, then I'll pause the video.
La trajectoire est nominale.
Okay, so that just means trajectory normal, or nominal rather.
Troisième allumage de la VOOM.
There we go, there's the ignition. And there's the cutoff. So I'll see you for the CubeSat deployments. Okay guys, this is the fourth burn of the VOOM. And soon we get to the actual CubeSat
Quatrième
separations.
extinction de la VOOM.
Yeah, you're almost right back where it started. Yeah, flying over the Bahamas and Florida there.
Opération Stade du Satellite et Sunstorm.
There goes those, and there
Opération
goes
Brocade.
that. Is that all, or is there more? Yeah, there it looks like there's more. Man, if they separate, I'm gone.
Acquisition Saint-Hubert.
Okay, so the Saint-Hubert tracking station has acquired it. Oh yeah, and also, yeah, you can see afterwards there's going to be another burn, which is going to bring it down in the Indian Ocean, I believe that is. Yeah, so we're just waiting on that.
Opération Radcube.
So yeah, that's all. I'm bottom 25, goodbye.